when you are putting your bot out there, it's making decisions on behalf of your company and giving those decisions to your users. Is it making the right kind of decisions, or it's making it up?
Do you think that's kind of a short-term concern, because ultimately all of this will be built into the model layer?
I strongly believe it will be always there, and I think it will become more and more challenging.
If you are not testing for trust, I think there is, I would say, your brand is under jeopardy.
Our AI agent takes this goal, and it might be a super long journey, a short journey. You run this test 100 times, it will be 100 times a different journey if it's AI on the other side. It's a cool new world.
We're in a bit of a messy place at the minute.
One bad AI agent and bad AI response can affect thousands of customers, right? Because of the scale at which you would want to deploy these AI agents.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the podcast. This conversation is with Amitha Pulijala from Cyara and Christoph Börner from Cyara. Amitha is the Chief Product Officer, Christoph is the VP of Engineering, and this conversation is all about testing. In a non-deterministic world, in a probabilistic world, which we are all inhabiting right now, with large language models and Gen AI agents, inevitably, every conversation can potentially be completely different, and therefore that changes the type of testing that you might want to do. And Christoph and Amitha let us know today why the principles haven't changed, but what you do specifically might have adapted a bit based on the technology that we have. There's lots of different types of testing required in order to get Gen AI agents into production. We've got red teaming testing, trust-based testing, compliance testing, EU Act regulation-based testing, and a whole bunch more. And so this conversation is about what you should test, why you should test, and some real insights into the challenges and solutions around the whole testing landscape and the quality assurance of your Gen AI agent. Very hot topic right now. And before we do go any further, I must tell you about the event that Cyara is putting on in April 28th to 30th in Dallas, Texas. It's called the CX Exchange, or the Exchange rather, the Exchange 2026, where CX and AI converge. You can get a free ticket if you are in the area by going to the show notes right now, and the link to get your ticket will be there. Definitely check it out. I think it's going to be absolutely immense. If you are in Texas, or even, in fact, to be honest, if you're in America, everywhere is pretty much accessible anyway, isn't it? So if you are anywhere in the US, get yourself down to this event. You can get a free ticket with the link in the show notes below. Check it out. Without further ado, this is Christoph and Amitha from Cyara on VUX World. Amitha, Christoph, welcome back to the show. Each of you individually has been on this before, possibly multiple times before, but not together. So welcome.
Happy to be here, Kane.
Nice to meet you again, Kane. Hi.
Likewise. So Amitha, you joined Cyara recently, am I correct?
Yes, that's right. 4 months here at Cyara.
Nice. Wicked. And Christoph, how long have you been at Cyara for? Botium was acquired, and what was that, 2018, 19?
I was 21.
21?
I'm not that old yet.
Apologies. I think when we've been around in this space for a while, the years start merging together, don't they?
Yeah, you're right.
Interesting. So maybe we can start with, what do you think has changed since you were each last on the show? So I think, Christoph, you were probably on, it probably was it before the acquisition, after the acquisition? It's been a few years, I think, since we've done something.
That's a good one. For me, things didn't change so much. So it's always hard to identify, was it before or after? I'm still doing what I love to do. But in coming back to your question, what definitely changed is, back in the days, we talked about NLP engines and, quality assurance for training models and telling clients where, they are overtrained or undertrained, or, was these days when we told clients it's not enough to have free training phrases for an intent, or 3,000 for one, or having 3,000 intents overall. It was really these days where it was about these basics. And back then we did a lot of regression, this kind of things, and nowadays it's all AI. All our clients are already on this transition phase, replacing their old school traditional scripted IVRs with at least Gen AI. The ultimate goal, at least this is what they are telling us, are autonomous agents. I have doubts, to be honest, if we really get there and let agents go completely wild. We have just seen what happened with OpenClaw and so on, how much challenges you introduce there. But yeah, majority of our clients is now in this stage where they have somehow still control over their flows. So it's a deterministic flow, but in between they're using a lot of Gen AI to generate more human-like conversations, to do more personalization, stuff like that. And that's for testing a huge challenge. Journeys are not predictable anymore. So also we had to adopt and literally use AI agents to test AI agents on our customer side. So this is the big challenge out there. Or let's say that's 50% of what I hear every day. The other 50% is the trust layer. Our clients are literally racing to put AI in front of their users. And this question of, is it trustworthy? Who makes this decision to go live? Who signs it? That's a tough one. Yeah. And we see this every day in the news, what can happen here. I would say these are the two big challenges: functionality of AI-driven customer experiences and the trust of it.
So Amitha, you have a lot of experience in this space as well. You were working at Vonage for a while. You were heavily involved in the AI side of things there. When we talk about trust, that can sometimes be kind of a bit of a blanket statement. Not a blanket statement, but I mean, there's different levels of trust, isn't there? And there's different areas where these things need to be trustworthy. When you hear the term AI trust, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to zoom out a little bit, right? What I would say, Kane, is that when we are talking about voice bots or chat bots, or you call them AI agents now. So I think when people start rolling them out today, when we talk to the customers and they are thinking about rolling out some of these to their own end users, I think there are two things, challenges, as Christoph was mentioning. One is really the trust piece of it, and I'll probably talk about a little bit, and the other piece is testing piece of it. I think in both cases, right, they are still very early, almost like where, API testing was 10 to 15 years ago. I come from the Vonage, API voice and video kind of a background as well. Everybody knows it's critical, but the tooling standards and even definitions, as you're asking, right? Definitions of what trust means, of what quality means, is still sort of evolving. But when we talk to our customers, one of the things that they bring up is, how do I really make sure my bot is out there and doing the right thing? And that is kind of a blanket statement, I would say, for trust. But when you dig deeper, right? So there are, the moment they put their bot into, not even into production, right? Even when they are actually developing the bot, it starts right from there, right? So let's say, the LLM has a new version and there is some sort of a drift. And then that drift, a small drift, can throw off the bot behavior by a large extent, right? So that's one. So how do you manage these things? How do you detect these things before actually it affects your production? Then there are, when you talk about trust, there are also these hallucinations, very common word that you hear everywhere from everybody, right? And most frequently so you hear because it happens so frequently. because LLM is not just a feature, or your AI agent is not just a feature. It's making decisions for your company, right? When you are putting your bot out there, it's making decisions on behalf of your company and giving those decisions to your users. So essentially, it also goes back to, is it making the right kind of decisions, or it's making it up, right? So I think that's another angle to look at trust. The third angle is just the facts, right? When it is giving out the facts, is it giving out the facts in the right way? So if somebody says, no, I want to cancel my order, will I get charged for it? And it can say, no, you'll not get charged for it, but there is a 30-day return policy or something. I don't know if it is rightly there, or if it's just making up that 30-day return policy, right? So certainly this affects the business. It's not just an noticeable thing. It's something that affects the business as well. So I think there's this part of checking the facts and making sure your agent or bot is giving out the right facts. And there are things like bias, which are also part of that AI trust, right? Bias is a very subtle and sensitive thing. So you want to make sure your bot is balancing that act of not being biased towards recommending a product. And I've read it somewhere, when somebody was ordering a t-shirt, it figured out that it was a female ordering the t-shirts, and it talked all about the colors that were in the pink hue, right? So somewhat like that, right? Or even when you're ordering children's clothes or something like that. From the retail perspective, that is kind of a bias as well, right? So I think some of these things that you have to check as well. So and then compliance is another one, right? Every regulated industry needs their bots to be compliant, and if you are not compliant with HIPAA or PCI, depending on your industry, that's a violation in itself, and it affects the business and so on. So trust is, as you said, a blanket statement, and there are so many aspects of it that the businesses have to take care of. And it's not something that you can do manually. You need tools, you need testing, you need that constant monitoring to make sure you can trust your bot or not.
Interesting. The one of the things I've been thinking about lately is every time there's a new model released, it seems these days, certainly the foundation model providers, it seems as though they're not just releasing models, they're releasing a whole bunch of stuff under the hood of each model. That what OpenAI is trying to do, for example, is OpenAI doesn't want ChatGPT making stuff up. So the hallucination rate in ChatGPT in particular as a product has come right down in the last few years. It used to be in 2022, you'd ask it one question and there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to just completely make something up. Whereas now it's pretty good. You still have to check it all. I recently did some big piece of analysis with Claude Code, and I had to check absolutely everything it did. And to be fair, I think it got absolutely everything right. Maybe there's one or two little mistakes that it made, but still you got to check it. So, Christoph, like you were saying earlier on, you mentioned like hallucination and stuff like that. Do you think that, for example, testing for hallucinations, drift, things like that, do you think that's kind of a short-term concern because ultimately all of this will be built into the model layer or underneath the model layer? Or do you think that the nature of the technology being probabilistic means that something like this is always going to need to be done?
I strongly believe it will be always there, and I think it will become more and more challenging. So once the pack, I totally agree with what you said. We see exactly the same. We give our clients the opportunity to power our AI agent that tests their IVRs or AI agents with various models. Some clients have a favor for GPT, and others, are big Google clients. They want to use Gemini and Grok and Llama. So there's a big variety. And therefore, we are permanently doing benchmark tests on all these models with every new version. And so we also see this improvement. But, thinking about these 600 clients that we have and the architectures I know from them, there's no one who uses such a model natively out of the box. When you look at the architecture, there's a RAG in between, an orchestration layer. They feed in data from here, from there. They fine tune it with their own stuff. So actually, the outcome that the user gets to hear on the phone or to see on a web chat or something was enriched and modified with so much data. That this testing is super important. And what I meant with it will become even more, with MCP, or maybe skills will be the big thing. I think that decision is not made yet, or maybe it's APIs, who knows. But at the end of the day, these AI agents will be able to really do things. So the game is changing. We're going away from something that is having a nice conversation with you, collecting your data, and then handing it over to a human who makes a final decision, to AI makes the decision. And I've just done an insurance where the AI agent does this this final risk assessment. You ask for a new assurance. In the past, the bot collected all the data, and at the end, the human being was like, oh, it's this Christoph guy from Vienna. He had a lot of car accidents. We don't give him an insurance. It's just, I make this up. And now it's an AI agent. And it's literally enabled to sign contracts. And therefore, testing will become, or QA, or however we call this in future. So long story short, I agree. These models are becoming better every day. But the need for testing is also getting bigger every day.
And how do you go about that testing then? So you're in a world where I think there's a number of things going on. We were talking before we started, me and Amitha, about generally speaking, what are we observing in the industry in terms of how businesses are approaching this stuff? And I was saying that the end-to-end Gen AI agents are less pervasive than the kind of middle ground, which is using generative AI to understand language, understand what the needs of the customer is, and then using some determinism around the process level. Even some companies are still being deterministic and scripted with responses in some cases. Others are taking an approach where they've still got an NLU in place, but when the NLU fails, they devolve to a retrieval augmented generation model, and so on. So we're in a bit of a messy place at the minute, where you've got some companies that are still end-to-end NLU, some that are progressively moving towards end-to-end Gen AI, some that are in the middle, and that hybrid middle can be a variation of different types of technologies working at different places. So how do you approach testing in a landscape that is so diverse these days?
Mm-hmm. So honestly, from that perspective, things didn't change too much. So going years back, I'm not saying the number, you would know how old I am, but back in the days when I learned coding, what is the first thing that you do? You write a unit test on your machine, and then back in the days we deployed to some test environment. There you do component tests. Then you have some integration environment, you do integration tests, you mock away stuff. And at some point you go into production, you test end to end. And the test types we have since so many years, you have unit, you have regression, you have performance, you have security, privacy. So all these things don't change. The way how we do it changed. It's when non-deterministic parts are involved, we obviously need to cover it with AI. So our clients are not scripting, letter by letter what they expect to hear from a bot. They define a goal, an intent. And by the way, I'm not a fan of this discussion in our domain, will intents go away? So clients still, they call your contact center to achieve something. They have a goal. It's an intention. Whatever we call it in future, but in general, we are still testing intents, and we have to test it for functionality, and we have to test, is it a great customer experience? We have to test it on scale. So we do performance testing. We need to monitor it in production. Even more now, as Amitha said, drift is obviously a huge problem. In the past, it was more like, with an NLP engine, it worked in UAT, great. we don't need to do so much in production. We can assume that the foundation is working. That's now not that easy anymore. So from this perspective, things didn't change too much. How we test it, yes, it's now an AI agent on our side that drives the journey, fully dynamic towards a goal that you defined. I define now in a Cyara product, I want to lock my credit card and get a new one. This is a goal, and this is what I have in mind when I call my bank and want to do this. Our AI agent takes this goal, and it might be a super long journey, a short journey. You run this test 100 times, it will be 100 times a different journey if it's AI on the other side. It's a cool new world, but from what we test, things didn't change too much. And to focus a bit more on your question also, with clients being on completely different stages, as we test end-to-end customer experiences, honestly, we don't care too much. If what we hear now on the phone from the CCAS system is now AI generated, if it's coming from an NLP engine, if it was completely scripted, or even if it was a human agent we got handed over to, it's AI on our side driving it. If it's a human agent, we will say, I want to lock my credit card. I do not care too much to whom I'm talking when I'm doing this end-to-end test. In an earlier stage, I might be maybe doing a component test really against the RAG or some LLM or the NLP engine. Then it's a bit a different story. But, overall, this whole setup didn't change too much. The only one where I have very interesting conversations with our clients is actually testing on scale, so performance, where, in the past in Bottium, you moved the slider and said, do now 100,000 journeys in parallel. And as these were literally API requests, let's say to Watson or something, and in step 4 or turn 4 of this journey, Watson was doing a backend request to fetch some data. We had in step 4 this load of 100,000 parallel users being on it. In the agentic world, this is not happening anymore because, we run a huge amount of calls. There's always a different journey. So it might be, in call 1, we're already doing the backend call. In call 2, the bot is still doing small talk with us. And in call 3, it already happened. So performance testing is changing a bit. There we are going into a bit, or we are introducing a new approach where we probably combine an AI component that creates load, let's say on this backend, and another AI agent who actually runs phone calls to have this same situation of it's Black Friday and 1 million people is calling Amazon every minute.
Interesting. And Amitha, I don't know if this is a question for you or if Christoph, this is another one for you, but one of the things that I was thinking about literally yesterday was that the cost of running Gen AI in production is it's non-trivial, or it can be non-trivial if you've got lots of interactions. So if you're doing 70 million conversations a year and you're using generative AI across your use cases, then the cost of that will creep up, especially if you've got kind of like a prompt chain behind the scenes that's doing a lot of validation on your retrieval and this, that, and the other. It's generating text, it's doing all this kind of stuff. And it's doing tool calls, and all that kind of stuff. The cost can kind of rise. And unlike other software, the more users you have, there is an incremental cost rather than a zero marginal cost type of thing as traditional technology has. So I'm wondering what the impact is on the testing side, because presumably you need to use the same kind of models to do the testing, and the testing of simulated conversations also then has a cost to it, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be in business. So how do you manage that side of things? If you're going to do load testing and you're going to put a load of volume through something, but you're still leveraging Gen AI, or you're simulating conversations across a range of use cases, and you want to do that at scale to make sure before you go to production you're not going to get any issues, or then maybe even you're doing it in production, how do you manage the whole cost element? Because it seems that is an important factor in all of this.
Yeah, I can take that, and Christoph can add to it as well. So I would look at it from two angles, Kane. So one angle is, so now that you have AI agents, so essentially the way you look at testing and your mindset of what to test, how to test it, should shift a little bit as well. It's when you are looking at AI agents, from the testing perspective, as Christoph mentioned, from our side, nothing has changed as much. But definitely it's not lift and shift, right? A kind of an attitude when you try to test things. So one I would say is trying to be more strategic in terms of what you test. So essentially with AI, practically you can generate millions of tests across millions of combinations of what you can do, but you have to be strategic on what are the golden paths, or focus on high risk journeys that you want to test first. And these could be, and this depends on two things as well. So one is, are you going full agentic, where you are, taking all your journeys and making them agentic and having LLMs answer all your things, or as you said, somewhere in the middle, where you're hybrid, you don't have to test everything. You're starting with maybe payments or your cancellations or account security or disputes. So this is essentially where you are deploying your LLM based agents and you're testing that, right? Even with that, how do you make it more strategic in terms of focusing on high risk journeys and so on. So that really testing is now becoming shifting from like a task that you have to do to more kind of a strategic thing that you look at in terms of what are the golden journeys, what are the high risk journeys, what do I need to test first. So I think one aspect of it is that, and we. From the Cyara perspective, we are looking at something called a recommendation engine, where depending on where the risks are, where the customer journeys are happening, and where we see the friction in the customer journeys, we will also recommend to our customers that these are the high risk flows. These are the flows that have multiple intents, and you need to test these flows first, so that they can sort of contain that cost as well, right? So that's one aspect to it. And the second aspect to it is also, we talked about, Christoph talked about load testing, thousands of tests if you have to run on the system. And this is where you really have to think about, how do you categorize your tests? There are tests that you have to run end to end, kind of taking from outside in perspective to make sure nothing in the journey is breaking in that end-to-end system. And there are certain tests that you would run at the component level, and these are probably API tests that can run cheaper. Still, I would still say that it would hit the LLM piece of it, but certainly if you are doing end-to-end, you are hitting many more components in between, right? You're testing the speech to text, text to speech. You're hitting all those components. So certainly, I think from that cost perspective, you really have to figure out how many tests you want to run end-to-end. Is it that necessary? And if you are just testing the load from your AI agent perspective, can you just do the component testing? So, Christoph, anything you want to add there?
Maybe some technical depth in addition. Generally speaking, and I would be surprised if you don't agree here with me, Kane, there's a lot of stuff out there that you could do better with NLP and LU engines at the moment. So, it's this race of we need to use AI everywhere. On the other side, there are very valid use cases. For our clients, costs, of course, are getting an issue when they realize, every turn in every conversation is now AI driven. And, I see the first clients going away from the big third-party language models and doing something like knowledge extraction to train their own small language model, hosted in their own with some, NVIDIA has this new Spark machines for a few $1,000. So this, and they are doing this for cost reasons, of course, also for infosec requirements, but cost is a big thing. I can tell you what we are doing on our side, because Cyara is, and Amitha, you have to correct me, but I think last year we were running something like 500 million customer journeys, and every journey is consists out of multiple turns. So something like lock my credit card will be a back and forth. You need to authenticate. You need to provide a card number. The AI agent will ask 3 times, really, and so on. Yeah. And if you imagine now that all of that is from today on AI driven, every simple turn, where it was in the past just fetching literally the prompts from a database, that's a huge difference. So what we are doing is we are using language models in a smart way. When I run such a test, there is a part where I need to generate a prompt. There is an AI part where I need to validate an AI agent response. There is an AI part where I need to sum up the context of the conversation where I am and add it to the actual next prompt or conversation step. There's an AI part where I do reasoning at the end. There's an AI part where I give recommendations to our client what to do now with the outcome. And all of these steps have a different level of complexity. And when you do R&D, and then when these things started 18 months ago or something, well, you use one language model. You use the biggest one with most of the training data, but you realize pretty quickly we will run out of money if we do it that way. Yeah? And therefore, for the less complex parts, we're using SLMs, we are using whatever. Yeah, you use Llama with 3 billion parameters for an easy task like just summing up a conversation context, versus AI reasoning. You go in with the 90 billion parameters Llama, and this is how you can have a huge impact on costs. And I expect our clients doing the same. In their architectures, there are also a lot of AI components. There are tougher tasks, there are easier tasks.
Yeah, well, I remember last year. Was it last year? I think it was last year. I remember having a discussion with somebody, and we were debating small language models versus large language models. And my kind of perspective at the beginning of last year, my kind of like prediction at the beginning of this year was that this year is going to be the year of hybrid agents. My prediction at the beginning of last year, 2025, was that 2025 is going to be the year of small language models. I think both of those things probably haven't happened yet, so maybe both of them things might happen in 2027, I don't know. But the argument it wasn't an argument, but the debate I was having was, my perspective was that small language models are actually going to be more fruitful in future, because why pay for the big inference cost and the token cost to do something that's fairly simple, when you could fine-tune a small language model, run it in your own environment, freeze it in time, lock in its capability, no model drift, none of that kind of stuff. Very cheap to run, very quick to run, and as predictable as it could be given the circumstances. Whereas the pushback that I received was that, well, the big models are only going to get better over time and cheaper over time and faster over time anyway, so why wouldn't you just use the big models? So I don't know if you have a perspective on that, either from your perspective in terms of building the tool or from the client's perspective in terms of those that you're working with. Where do you sit on that? Are small language models the future, or are large language models the future?
No, I can give you from the client perspective, because certainly I think Christoph has a better view from the Cyara perspective. But this was exactly the kind of problem that we were facing, Ken, in my last organization that I worked with. So essentially, I think one, because of the infosec, certainly. And 2 is, can we have more contained costs? And we rolled out, a small language model. But certainly, I think the argument that you heard in terms of large language models getting better, there was always this debate about why we shouldn't get into go and get Gemini or Llama, because we hear that with every release that they have, the hallucination is improving. The the reasoning is improving, the memory is improving. So why shouldn't we do that? So ultimately, I think, once we got our security clearance, we got into one of those bigger models. I don't know, certainly from the future perspective, I've heard some of our customers still debating about small language models, giving them the flexibility. And also, I think from the InfoSec perspective, it's much easier for them to maintain and lock in something. From the drift perspective, as you said, it's much easier. But as we are evolving and trying to put something quickly in the market, which is more dependable, I think large language model was something that we chose, and this was last year. That Christoph, you can add your thoughts there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about inventing a new term, calling it DLMs, which are small language models, but clients are talking a lot about domain-based language models. So you take an SLM and you mainly train it on your domain, and the use case is depending on the domain the client is in, and let's say healthcare, super restricted domain. Our healthcare clients are using language models, but they put them into so many boundaries. They are so restricted, and then they use them in their scripted journey for one node, for one turn, for password reset. Password reset has some variations because sometimes you are asked for these security questions you have defined, and sometimes for something else, whatever. But using their, GPT 5.2, fully featured, fledged, is a huge waste of money. And so it's coming back to the question we had before. They are all seeing the costs that are involved. And I'm always thinking here about the statistics of how many billions of dollars are spent every month on GPT by people wasting tokens or burning tokens for starting with hi or hello, instead of giving GPT a prompt of what they actually want to have and need and do. So our clients are taking more and more care of this, and I think something like domain-based language models, and this will be obviously small language models. I don't know if it's 2026, but maybe it's 2027. Who knows? But yeah, the big, enormous models are an overkill for a lot of the things we see.
Yeah. What about the tech bros who would say that in restricting the performance of the model based on very narrow, strict domains or very narrowly defined processes, that you forego the creativity that the model allows you to have?
Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if I can quote here a client, but let me phrase it that way. InfoSec is comes over creativity or data privacy and so on, and then a lot of these things come by law. If I look at the European AI Act, let's be honest, if you are fully compliant, this restricts you in many ways of what you do and what you use. And I'm also a consumer, not only a tech guy, so that's a good thing. I would agree with these tech pros. Yes, of course, but you have to see the context. I mean, it's healthcare. It's my health data. I don't want this to be breached or things like that. And for me, it's also okay when I talk to my healthcare agent if it's not 100% superhuman-like, personalized or whatever. If it's not telling me jokes or stuff, I don't expect this there or from my banking AI agent. Versus if it's another domain where things are not so strict. I don't know. Talk to my Netflix AI agent about what should be the next movie I watch with my girlfriend. There things can go. We need less boundaries. Let's call it like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was playing devil's advocate a bit there, but my perspective is kind of like, maybe it's not in my perspective, but one way of thinking about it, I think, is that the space for creativity in an enterprise use case maybe is the space that you haven't defined. If you can define a process and this thing needs to do that, then that, and use this API at this point when it's got this data and that API at that point when it's got that data, you know what your business process is and you know what needs to happen when. You use the language model to get the data from the customer and deal with the language bit. So for me, the gap in specification seemingly is the room for creativity, which arguably you probably don't want because it can be specified. Maybe, I don't know. But I suppose another way of thinking about it is that maybe it's down to reasoning, and you need, whether creativity is the right word, maybe reasoning is a better word, which is if someone's got a very complex use case that is a bit harder to pin down and it requires multiple different processes to be enabled to fulfill it, you've got to have some kind of freedom there for the model to work its proverbial magic. I don't know. It's an interesting debate.
It's kind of a balance. And probably it'll play out in a year or so, because I think we still see a lot of improvements coming in the large language models. So at some point of time, it'll play out, balance out, and maybe that's the tipping point between creativity and costs.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when is, I do concur with what you mentioned earlier, Christoph, which was that it's a common conversation testing at the moment. I think people are realizing that prototyping, going from A to B prototype wise, is a very quick and easy thing to do. Going from B to C in terms of production is a very challenging thing to do, and there's a lot of work to be done in that process of refinement and making it reliable enough to go live. In your experience now working with clients and introducing generative AI, one of the questions that I often get asked here and there is, how do we know when something is ready to go live? Given that every conversation might be different, where do you draw the line to say, okay, yeah, now we're happy, we're ready to go live?
Yeah, that's one of the number one questions we also get every day. And, sometimes we end up there with a philosophical discussion. Hopefully we do here. Obviously things have changed in the past. We had an NLP engine to test an amount X of potential flows through an IVR, and then the famous term test coverage came in. Yeah, how many of our flows, how many of our journeys are covered? In best case, 100%. And with an IVR menu that had a few options, this was actually doable. With really autonomous agents, this is obviously gone, when they can talk literally about everything. But I'm coming back to intent. Yeah, I said I don't think this term will go away. You are a bank. You have your top use cases. So things didn't change. Yeah, same thing we did with when we started to build bots back in the days. Yeah, you ask clients, what are your top intents? Know your challenge, know your channels. What are clients asking for? Obviously, you need to test for these journeys. Yeah, if I'm a bank, my agent needs to handle all this stuff. Checking account balance, locking cards, transferring money. Do I need to test if the joke of the day is good or something? Testing always was and always will be about minimizing risks. No test provider like we do will ever sign, we find 100% of all issues. This wasn't there in the past and won't be in the future. So clients have to define, and of course they get tool support here. A client would say in the Cyara platform, I'm in telecom, and we will help them with AI and with our models being fine-tuned on all the test data, on all the journeys we ran over 15 years. We would tell them, hey, this is where typically flaws are. This is where it's breaking. We can auto-generate tests for you. But there's still the human in the loop thing, because telecom provider X might say, that's all great, but we have this special thing, this special case, this special product. And the second thing is this trust layer. You need to you need to, if you're in Europe, you need to test for the European AI Act, or in America, you need to test for HIPAA, and you are, I don't know, in military, you need to comply with all that stuff. You need to test for prompt injections, for API flooding, for all that stuff. Yeah? And this became with AI agents utmost impossible. There's so much things to do. You need tooling that supports you, and we must not forget the ladies and gentlemen who have to do this, who need to tell their manager, yes, we are ready to go live, and or not. 10 years ago, they were picking a mobile phone and calling an IVR. These were the tests they were doing. And Cyara gave them a tool to run the scripted tests. And now it's AI, and prompting comes into game and play. So things are becoming a bit more complex from that perspective, and therefore they need the right tooling and the support. But this, back to your initial question, there won't be something like we need 95% of test coverage, then we can go live. Now, this is, imagine being Sam Altman saying this to his QA department, we need 95% of test coverage of the new GPT 5.2. How many tests are these? We would be happy to run them in a consumption-based model. But yeah, it's
I think
different.
Yeah, two aspects of it, right? The test coverage, it's almost impossible to have 100% coverage. So I think you really have to determine what are the best paths you want to test. At the same time, accuracy and just in terms of relevance and accuracy as well, right? So how would you say, right? Even if it is, let's say, 99% accurate, do you really want to roll out if it is 1% not accurate? So I think it really, I think, depends on, how comfortable you are, and also different other factors like AI trust and things like that. It's not just testing, but there is trust, compliance, and other aspects to it as well.
And I suppose, how do you go about then testing for something like that? How do you go about testing for compliance, or I don't know, how do you go about doing that? It seems quite a hard thing to pin down.
So technically, what we do is we fine-tune the model with the European AI Act, and we instruct our AI agent literally, hey, take now all this data and bring it into a conversation with the bot, the AI agent, the AI-driven IVR you are testing. And to pin this down to a super easy use case, our AI agent would start a conversation, create some context, create a relationship. If it's a banking agent, it might ask something like, hey, tell me about the latest savings products. And then at some point it would be like, hey, by the way, this whole conversation here, are you storing the data? Where are you storing it? And in which region? It would ask these questions based on the European AI Act. And as the AI Act is 1,000 pages, it's a lot of tests to do here. And we get back an answer. The bot we are testing tells us, I can't tell you. Well, red flag. Yeah? You have to tell us. Actually, you need to make the chain of thought public if you ask for it. Yeah?
Is that the case?
I can't tell you.
Sorry, is that the case in the EU AI Act? I'm not as familiar with that, but is it that chatbots and AI agents have to be able to answer these questions, or is it that the organisation has to be able to demonstrate that it's following the legislation?
Yeah. So I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to bring myself into trouble here. It definitely depends on the use case, on the domain. Is this an FAQ bot? Are you logged in? Is it super sensitive data? Is it PII? So it's hard to give here, a yes, no, or red, green. But we can definitely do this kind of things. Yeah? There will be stuff like, give me examples for whatever records in your database. And there are AI agents who are coming back with live data of things they have in their database. Yeah? So this is how it works.
Yeah.
Technically there's more to it. Yeah? But you would simply see then, hey, point 2.4 of the European AI Act, you have to comply with X, Y, Z. You are not. Or, you ask, where is my data stored? And the bot comes back with, it's I don't know, it's in America. And you were like, hey, we're in Europe. Data has to stay here according to law. So this would be breaches it identifies. As I said, it's just a lot of tests that are running here, because all these compliance acts are pretty big, and at the moment we are doing it with the public regulations. The next step will potentially be big companies have their own custom stuff. You are I don't know if you have even one in your company, where you say, hey, this is our compliance act. If you're working here, you need to be compliant with that. Upload this. Our AI agent consumes it, creates tests out of it. This is the principle behind it.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think even outside of CX, right? So if you're in HR, I think there are certain compliance policies that every organization has. I think, and nowadays you see an HR bot, operations bot. So, and I still remember, Ken, in early days, right? So probably around 2023, 24, with some of these bots, if you go and ask, what technology did you use? What vendors did you use? I think they actually always gave that information. So again, I think is that compliant? Is that not? Is that just real fact? Is that not? I think there's a lot of nuance here, and a lot of these I think have to be fine-tuned by the organizations themselves as well, right? So how do I define my act? What do I want my bot to do? And these are something configurable in that AI trust layer for that organization as well.
Nice. So maybe to bring it to a close here, we'll start with you, Amitha. What is, we've spoke about a lot of the different types of testing that you can and should do. If you were to just pick one thing that from speaking to customers, this is the biggest gap right now, this is the challenge that everyone's facing, or the thing that is being underutilized, what is the one thing that you think, if you do nothing else, you need to test for this?
I would say trust is key. It's certainly a lot of customers tend to roll out a lot of bots, but if you are not testing for trust, I think there is I would say your brand is under jeopardy, because at the end of the day, right, you are doing all this to improve your customer experience. But if your bot is going out there, being the first point of contact for a lot of your, millions of your customers, let's say, and you're not putting the right kind of guardrails for your bot on how to respond, at the end of the day, right? If your bot is going there and responding something that it's not supposed to do, or even bringing some information which is probably not having a business impact as well. So something like cancellations, or even in banking, for example, transactions, whether this transaction can go through or not. If the bot is making that kind of a decision by itself without any guardrails, I think it's a big impact for that financial industry as well. So in terms of compliance, in terms of even misuse, detecting that misuse, in terms of detecting the facts, whether it's giving out the right facts or not, and just the reputation of the brand, I think it all depends on the whole of that trust layer. And I think if organization has to test for something before they roll out the bots, and they are damn serious about putting the bots out there for their customers, I think it's really the trust piece of it that they have to test.
Wicked. What about you, Christoph? If you have to pick one thing that your clients absolutely have to do, what would that be?
It actually also falls into this trust layer that Amitha mentioned. I would highlight here the whole ethics part. Our clients are coming in with we fear drift, accuracy, hallucinations, because this is what they see every day also in the news, where AI agents are failing, and you demo to them our fact checking or misuse testing, security, compliance. They are all immediately bought in. But on the ethics layer, when you show them bias testing, when you show them, hey, your AI agent is I just bias tested a huge AI agent, big company, that would lend engineers. I think they have 500,000 people in their database, and our AI agent in this bias test simulated a woman applying there for a software developer role, and their AI agent comes back with, you better apply in marketing. This is too technical. This is a job for a man. Yeah? So this is something that is such a no-go and does so much damage to your brand. But most of our clients have this functional thinking. Yeah, it has to work. It has to be correct. It shouldn't reveal PII data and so on. That's all true. I sign this immediately. But this ethics layer of AI is as important as the functional layer. Therefore, I would go with ethics.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I would say that, one, let's say, inefficient human agent can probably affect one customer or maybe a few customers in their shift. But, one bad AI agent and bad AI response can, affect thousands of customers, right? Because of the scale at which you would want to deploy these AI agents. So I think it's super important to look at this very seriously.
Brilliant. Well, Amitha, Christoph, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to go and check out Cyara, it is cyara.com, Cyara.com. And you're also doing the exchange in 2026 in April 28th to 30th in Dallas, Texas, where AI and CX converge. So if people are interested in that, check out that on at Cyara.com. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Nice one. Christoph, I think you come here one more time and you get the infamous gold cap for being 3 times on the podcast. We've done webinars together. Amitha, we've done webinars together. This, I think, is your first. Although, having said that, were you on a podcast, Amitha, or was it a webinar?
It was on the podcast, I believe.
Oh, okay then. All right. Well, both of you then. Both of you return.
Let's not change topics. When and where do I get my cap?
So you're right, actually. Yeah, it was a podcast, Amitha. So Amitha and Christoph, you've both been on twice. One more, and you get the gold VUX cap. So one more appearance. So when and where, Christoph, is very much the question. So we will definitely need to do this again sometime.
If you get some spam email or text from somebody regarding the details of the cap, you know where it's coming from. I think it's Christoph.
Nice one. Wicked. Cool. Well, thank you both again, and thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you again on the next one. Thanks now. Bye.